By the rivers of Babylon, yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
Shalom, shalom, family. Congregation Bay D.C.B presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. Date, May 27, 2023. Location, Shell's Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. To contact us for more information, you can contact us at 347-622-9090 or on our email, info@baydcb.org. Once again, Congregation Bay D.C.B presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. The date is May 27, 2023. The location, Shells Loft, Brooklyn, located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can contact us at 347-622-9090 on our email, info@baydcb.org. This is a time of praise and joy and coming together between brothers and sisters. All are invited. Come out with your best spirit of praise. Hallelujah. Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome to another Tanakh Review. My name is Uzi Alewi, one of the teachers of Congregation D.C.B, CHOKMAH, BINAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything, food, clothing, and shelter, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Giving glory to the Most High King for all things and everything. And I'm thankful to this great King for all the things that he does for me in my life. Thanking him for my family. Kobe, Yisrael, scattered in the four corners of the earth. Thanking the Most High God, of course, for all of you, the listening audience, and for tuning in with us every week. And, just being with us means a lot to us. So we thank you all for even giving us the time. Giving, once again, all glory to the Most High King of the universe, Yehudah. Also giving due respect to the leader of the congregation, even my brother, Chief Prince Yadiel Ben Yissaskar. Praying that the Creator be with him and his family, his household. Most High God will bless him. Praying that the Most High God will continue to be with him and give him good health. Pray that he gives us all good health and that he protects us all. So today we will be going through the 120th Psalm. And for that, I will pass it on to one of my teachers and my mentors, even Nasik Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. Also, he will be going over the portions of Tasriya Metzor. So, thanking the Most High God once again for the wisdom and the understanding. And without any further ado, I pass it on to Nasik Zurishaddai. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, let's give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. Due respect to the platform we're on, leadership, spiritual leader, Chief Prince and Yariel Ben Yissaskar, the host Chief Uzael, to the princes, chiefs, Kohanim, the rabbinate, Maureen, brothers and sisters and visitors. I greet you in the tongue of my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem, and an early Shabbat Shalom. I'll be covering this is one of the first of the double portions that we have beginning this particular year. And it's interesting that this usually comes up in what they call a leap year, about but within a leap year, basically separate, and they come up separate. But this one, a few times that they happen to come up as a combined portion, being we have 52 weeks in a year, and the 5 books of the Chumash, what most people say as the Torah, is, we try to do it within a 52-week time, which is a solar year. And since it's 54, sometimes it be double, and then sometimes leap year where they be separate. So right now, what's interesting is for those, because I'm just going to bring out a few points in this, because they're very long. Just one of the longest portions that they'll be discussing around this time of year as well. So what I'll be doing is just going over some of the for those that want to read the whole thing, that didn't read it, maybe didn't have time to read it. Tasriah, which means from the words is seed, is from the 12th chapter of Leviticus, first verse, and it goes to the 13th chapter, the 59th verse, which is the end of the 13th chapter. Then Mesorah happens to go from the 14th chapter, first verse of Leviticus, to the 15th chapter, 33rd verse, which is basically the end of that particular portion. The Haftorah for Tasriah is usually 2 Kings 4 and verse 42, and it goes to chapter 5, verse 19. But when it comes to the Mesorah, it's 2 Kings 7 chapter, 3rd verse to the 20th verse. The Psalms for Tasriah that normally would be, which I'm not going to do today, which is normally the 106th Psalm. For those that might want to try to extrapolate certain points and see how it relates to the Sidra. And it's a very interesting Psalm as well, because it actually started off with Hallelujah and ends with Hallelujah. And it's a very interesting Psalm. I'm not going to touch on it today, but I would advise people to just read the 106th Psalm. And the Psalm that go with Mesorah is 120th. Now, normally, like I said, for those who might not know, when you have a double Sidra, those that follow certain traditions, they, in the synagogue, they might, or on the house of worship, with those that follow a religious, a rabbinic tradition, they will read the first part of the Sidra when they call people up to read out the scroll, the Torah scroll. And when it goes to the Haftorah, they would read the Haftorah from the second part. So since it's a double Sidra, and they have each one have their own particular psalm that's allotted to them, I'm just going to read from the second part of this, the Mesorah part of Psalm 120. So there's a couple interesting things in it. So I would like to advise people to go over both of those portions in the book of Leviticus, from Tasriah and Mesorah, because it's very interesting. And there's some very, very interesting things in our history in the book of Kings with this prophet Elisha. Elisha was the disciple, protege of the prophet that had ascended into heaven in a fiery chariot, which was Elijah. So Elijah was Elisha's mentor, and Elisha happened to get a double portion or double power of what his mentor had did in life. And he pretty much imitated all the, miracles that Elijah did. He pretty much did the same thing, mimicked pretty much all that, and some extra extraordinary areas as well. So we're going. I just want to bring out the first portion just a little bit, and in Leviticus, the 12th chapter. So I'll try to be a little bit not too long. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, "Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, if a woman be delivered and bear a man child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. As in the days of the impurity of her sickness shall she be unclean. And in the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised, and she shall continue in the blood of purification 3 and 30 days. She shall touch no hollow thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purification be fulfilled. All right. But if she bear a male child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her impurity, and she shall continue in the blood of her purification 60 days, which is 66 days. And when the days of her purification are fulfilled, for a son or for a daughter, you shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering, unto the door of the tent of meeting unto the priest. And he shall offer it before the Lord and make atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the fountain of her blood. This is the law for her that beareth, whether a male or a female. And it goes on about if it means between, she brings something less if she can't afford that. But what I want to focus on, because I know a lot of people say, and they take the Genesis story and then, and they read into it about, the seed of the woman, Eve or Hawa, had, conceived Cain. And so, they have all these little different viewpoints out there. But, and then some of them will say, well, make an analogy of pretty much the New Testament. Mary was, have a seed, but it's her seed and nothing to do with Joseph at all. Well, here in the book, it says, when a woman conceives seed, all right, so the seed is coming from the man, when they cohabitate, so the seed is coming from the man, but when it's receptacle and it actually fertilizes the eggs, it's referred to that she conceived it, but it's not, she didn't have the seed from the beginning. So in other words, ovulation, her ovaries, at certain times that a woman in a certain age bracket is able to be impregnated. But I just want to bring out that some people make a big issue on the term when a woman conceives seed, and they spin off a whole lot of different doctrines in reference to that. That's not really my focus of the topic today. I just want to bring out that here they talk about a woman having a seed, but not no immaculate conception. So when we go further, why should she be? We learn a couple of things in this thing concerning the woman, and it started off in saying that she's unclean for 7 days if she have a male child. But when we look deeper into it, on the 8th day she circumcised the son. So now circumcision is part of the covenant, and it lets you know there's 2 types of blood that's being emitted. The first 7 days for the male child is the blood and the impure blood, TMH blood, where she's neither, had to be separate. The other blood is blood of purification blood. Now, to say, I'm not an expert to say what one blood look like and the other blood don't look like. I know, but there's people that study that, and if you check history in certain rabbinic circles, they're supposed to know, when this is actually, blood of administrative blood as opposed to a blood of purification or spotting, a certain spotting at a certain time. That's not an area that I'm, proficient in, and very few people are proficient in that particular area that really would know the difference. But the Torah, without a microscope, letting you know there is a difference. And medically, it definitely shows it's a difference. Now, why is the woman, but when she circumcises a child on the 8th day, and he becomes in the covenant, then we learn something that's interesting. Only 2 times to talk about the 8th day, a day of circumcision. One, when it talks about in Genesis, when the first circumcision was first introduced to Abraham, it was introduced to him, whereas that any male child of his descendants must be circumcised 8 days old. Anyone 8 days old must be circumcised. All right, so 8 days old or older. You could never be too late, but you could be too early. Now, here we learn from this particular portion that it must be done if the baby is healthy on the 8th day. This is the only spot where we find that it, and they would say it must be done on the 8th day. So if the 8th day is the Shabbat, it's done on the Shabbat. And most people would argue and say, well, I thought we don't do certain work and certain surgeries on Shabbat. Well, when it comes to the circumcision, then that will supersede Shabbat because it says whenever that 8th day falls. Now, if the child is not healthy, and say it takes another, a little time, maybe a week or so for the child to be healthy, then you will be prohibited to circumcise him on Shabbat because now that's no longer the 8th day. Now we always had these discussions, but I'm not going to go into it much, but just throw it out there. Is that what if a person is born Bain outer Bayim between evenings, Friday evening, going into the Shabbat. Now it's not, and when between the evenings, it could be sunset, but it's not, no stars is out. You'll find a sight, 3 stars out or 2 stars out. You don't cite that. So is the child born on a Friday or is he born on a Shabbat? And it depends on the location too, because, basically, how long it is between sunset and the stars coming out. So it depends on the season, it depends on the areas. Those are some factors that some people don't consider. So, but, that's important if you really want to say, well, I'm going to try to do the law to the letter of the law and fulfill that particular commandment, that if you say, all right, he's, if you say that time that he was born was actually Friday, then you could not circumcise him because now it would have been, it'd have been too early. And then if we said it was Shabbat, it'd be too late because then it'd be the 9th day. So you're doing the 7th day or either you're doing the 9th day. So that's why it's important to know. But those are discussions you can have with your various teachers and stuff like that between periods of time. And then they discuss that amongst very Talmudic sources. So for those that's really interesting in knowing that particular facet, they should, go and look at and listen to the arguments that's posed on both sides in reference to that and discuss on it. Another interesting fact is that she's unclean for being around the sanctuary proper. Now, the school I come from, we always used to tell women when they had their regular monthly, don't come around. And when they had the child, don't come around to after a certain period of time. That's what we do. We know that it's really talking about temple worship, the actual temple. And at the time, they had the tabernacle. So from the tabernacle to the temple, those would be considered sanctuaries. But most of us today consider our various places of worship some sort of sanctuary, even though it's not a sanctuary on the level, nowhere near the level that what the book is described as a sanctuary. But that was a particular custom that we had from the group I happened to grow up under. Other people, and especially around some Orthodox circles, they just come, whether it's that time or not come that time. But it also has a different, if you go on the spiritual level, it's actually have a spiritual negation to be around at that time too as well. And it's strange that she performing the first one of the early commandments is being fruitful and multiply, and yet she become ritually unclean. And the man that impregnated her at that time, when he impregnated her, when the seed of copulation leaves him, he's only unclean until the evening, no matter what. And he's not allowed to have any kind of relationship with her during this period as well. So, and why it's double for a female? There's so many discussions in reference to that. I spoke on it in the past, and some say that the female would be, the daughter will grow up to be a woman one day, and she'll go through that same process. Some say it's harder for her to have, reproduce somebody that in her gender as opposed to a male's gender. Some say, well, they have this issue where if the woman, if the man, having an emission first, and then the ovary come down and connects, then most likely it will be a male child. If the woman comes first, then it would be a female child. Those are some things they say. I just know about the different discussions they have. That I'm not an expert on, but I'm just saying these are some of the discussions they have in reference to that. The book and the Torah and the book we read, it doesn't give an explanation why, in a sense, but it's worth thinking about and considering, because somebody that's really out in outside of the holy precincts and can't participate in anything holy at this particular time when they're under that condition, is a serious thing for those that are striving to be godly. So let's look a little bit further into this area. We go from a woman having a child and what she got to do to what they call a leper. In the 13th chapter, it says, and the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying. So the first part, it talks about Lord speaking to Moses. Right, it's talking to Moses, but in this particular portion, in the second chapter here, it says, and the Lord spoke unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, when a man shall have a skin, having the skin in the skin of his flesh, a rising or a scab or a bright spot, and it become in the skin of his flesh the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priest, and the priest shall look upon the plague in the skin of the flesh, and if the hairs in the plague be turned white, and the appearance of the plague be deeper than the skin of the flesh, it is the plague of leprosy, and the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. All right, now I just wanted to stop there. I'm not going to go through the whole thing on this here about leprosy. I just want to bring out some interesting points. One, that now this law is being brought to Moses and Aaron at the same time. All right, holy. So one, we try to say, well, what do leprosy have to do with a woman having a child, birth? So those are some things that you might want to discuss with your various teachers, because we start talking about a child being born, a woman being unclean, and now we're starting to talk about a skin ailment in a person, starting off with a man. And what is interesting is that when you study it, and they call it leprosy in English, but I like to use the word sarat. Sarat is what the Hebrew word is, and we cannot really translate it into the English connotation of what has the book describe it, because it has so many different dimensions, of how it looks. So it could be in the skin in a human skin. It could be in a different part of the body. It could look a certain way there. It could be in the garment, and it could be in the house. And they use various different terms to describe that particular affliction. And then what's interesting is that it seems super fluid, to be able to look at a person's skin and say, oh, your skin don't look right. You unclean. And it's only skin deep. See, normally, and so it's a lot of interesting things when it comes down to about the leprosy and this and what they call Torah in this particular chapter. Is that one, we don't know, we didn't see that since the temple was standing. The temple been destroyed for a couple of thousand years. The temple was destroyed, or close to 2,000 years. They were only had to be concerned with during the temple times, only in that particular era. Now here it is that when this law is given, they're in the wilderness. And when they're given in this law in the wilderness, that means the Mishkan, everybody was camped around the tabernacle, which is called the Mishkan. Everybody's camped around it. And you saying a person looking at it, and they describe it, it didn't say that he's sick. They didn't even say it's contagious. So now, normally a person have an ailment, it used to be internal, and either he's sick, can operate, can function the way he would need to function. But when we read a description of this particular skin disorder, which I would call it at this particular time, it didn't say the person couldn't function. It didn't say the person had short breath, or it never even said the guy was contagious like a disease type thing. He's contagious in a different manner. He's contagious ritually, but not in the sense that you can say physically, a guy with leprosy was at this time, what they describe, touch me or touch this individual, and they're going to jump on you. It doesn't shows that in this particular case. And we wonder, there's always one of them things to say, well, what's the issue with Sara'at that it was so, so disgusting, where it make a person ritually isolated. And I spoke on it before, you have different levels of uncleanliness. You have like I said, we read about a woman being unclean, and when she go through a monthly, and then you read about when she have a child. Then you read about people that's unclean by the day. But then you read about one that has Sara'at. Now, a person that might be unclean, say a regular person that might be unclean, can't be around per se the priestly area, right? Can't be around the priestly area, but it might be around the Levitical order. Then a woman that might be unclean for a time of her nida, she won't be in the priest or the Levitical area, but she might be within the confines of Israel. She would be in the Levitical. Excuse me. Let me just back that up just a little bit. I think I made a mistake there. When a person is ritually unclean, she won't be around the priest order, the priestly area, because anything ritually the sanctuary, she'll be disqualified from that area. All right, but she could be in the Levitical camp because she's nursing a baby and stuff like that. A person that's unclean by the dead can't be in the priest or the Levitical order, but he could be amongst the nation of Israel. He's still within them in that area. But a person that got Sara'at, he's put completely outside the nation of Israel, completely outside the whole perimeter. So you had three levels. You had the priest area, then you had the Levitical area, then you had the nation of Israel area, and then you had outside of that. So that's where the one that has Sara'at will be put out. And it was interesting what happens when we get cities later on. So when we look at this here law, we see how it's stated for this particular time in the wilderness, and how later on they make a different deduction of how far they had to be. When Jerusalem became the city where God chose the name to be, that city became the sanctuary city. So anybody that was around that particular area would be put out of the area. And what's interesting is that we read all the symptoms of what this particular ailment is about. And when we read all the symptoms about what this particular ailment is about, we have those that might pay close attention, have good understanding of the verses and the word and the verbiage that's used here, then they should be an expert in spotting it. But you could be the expert in spotting it, but only the priest. If you're not of the bloodline of the priest, you can't say this individual has Sarai. Now you might know the symptoms excellent, and the priest might be lacking on this particular topic and subject. Like I said about certain blood, but how can you tell between the blood of the blood that's Tameh and the blood that's Tahor? It's still blood, but there's a difference, and the book makes a difference in it. So now here you might have a priest that might not study that deep. He's born a priest, and yet it's only the priest that can proclaim an individual whether you're clean and not clean. And what's happened, and he's brought unto the Kohen, and later on sometimes talk about the Kohen, going to him. So that's another story. I spoke on it a little bit more, and when I spoke on about how the individual is brought to the Kohen, and then the Kohen also will have to come to him at one point in time. When do the Kohen go to see somebody that possibly is not ritually pure? And is he only going to be pure when he stays pure? Now, what's also interesting when we look at this particular chapter is that he don't say Sarai is unclean. He say the individual is unclean. When you go, and so when we look at it very carefully, the wording that used is that if I'm looking at this spot and this spot has a particular, prohibition that I recognize, it would make sense to say, oh, that spot is, that's cancerous, or that's dust and dust and dust. I don't say you cancerous. I say that spot is. That's a spot, that's a cancerous spot. You got spots of cancer, this here and that, over here and over there. But when we look at the scriptures here, the priest don't say that is unclean. He say the individual is unclean. And that teaches you a particular lesson, because sometimes we don't look at the whole individual. We tend to just look at the spot. But before you make a judgment about the individual, you got to first start to understand and look at the whole individual. So the priest pronounced the individual, the whole individual, as being unclean. He don't pronounce just that spot as being unclean. All right, so, and imagine also the humiliation that he must go through, that he got to not only be outside, but he got to wear, a veil over his upper lip, walk around with a veil, and cry out, unclean, unclean, outside the city. That's a humiliating thing. So now, traditionally, they say leprosy comes from, gossip. For the most part, when you see it, the first time we read about leprosy, Zera'at, I keep saying, that's just a habit. Excuse me if I'm saying leprosy a lot because my circles are around. But Zera'at, the first time you see that term Zera'at itself is with Moses, when he told the people, don't believe me. And the Creator said, put your hand in your bosom and take it out. And it said, it was Zera'at, and it was white as snow. But he never said Moses was unclean. That's something interesting. But Moses did make a statement. Miriam made a statement. Her and Aaron, but Miriam, became unclean. Maybe that anointing oil of Aaron was strong enough to keep him in the safe for a moment. But when you look at the Torah about a person that has a ra'at, it didn't say he spoke evil and ill. But for the most part, a lot of times people speak evil and ill. But when you read about the person that was saved in one of the Haftorahs from Zera'at and cleansed of it, that you find out the prophet's servant, Gehazi. The guy that was cleansed of it was called Naaman. But when you read about the servant of Elisha, Elijah's protege, you find that individual winds up using false talk, bad talk concerning, what his master wanted. So he not only, lying and everything like that, but he was greedy. So those are only some of the examples that we see. And we find out that you have 4 lepers in one of the other Haftorahs, and you don't find out why they have it. Now, they used a play on words, but I'm not going to focus on that right now, just to make things somewhat timely. But you find that in these 4 lepers, guys that has Zera'at in the Book of Kings, that you don't know what they did. But one thing we know for sure, sometimes when you gossip, if you follow that particular version and saying that's some of the reasons for it, because we don't know really why, and it's deductive why. We deduce it from certain things and certain events that happen, that the individual from evil talk, bad talk about people. Sometimes talk could be true, but with an evil intent. Now, there's sometimes you have to talk negative concerning an individual, and you're obligated by the law of God to talk negative about an individual to save somebody. And I'm saying that, so I want to explain this for a moment, because I don't want to leave this open to the floor. Is if I'm going to hire an individual to work in my store, and he tell me he's this and that and the other, and so I'm getting ready to hire him, and you know the individual, you know him to be a thief, you know him to be a liar, you know that he was caught to be that way, caught several times, and you say, I don't want to say nothing because I don't want to be seen like I'm gossiping, then that's the time you're supposed to tell me, because now you're trying to, not only you preventing him from getting another possible victim, and also you saving me from being a victim. So then you're supposed to, that's one of the times you're supposed to say, look, so-and-so been known to be stealing before and stuff like that. You might want to consider this here, because he just got caught for stealing for such and such. He just got caught, lying about such and such. So, you might want to consider before you, hire and put such X amount of X, Y, and Z in his hands. That is not the gossip. That's a negative gossip. Even though it's talking bad about the individual, you telling the truth about the individual, in that case, to save another individual from falling victim, and also saving the individual from possibly being tempted to continue in that way. So that's the kind of gossip and talebearing that that well, if you say gossip, that's the only kind of gossip that you'd be able to present in that case. So I just want to bring that out there to the people who might look over that area, because some people say, I don't want to start nothing. Oh, so and so, So sometimes you might have to say something for goodness sake. And then another thing I'd like to bring up before I move on to the Psalms is that when we look at the individual and say he's out the camp, imagine the Kohen who's supposed to bring people closer to the Creator got to say this guy's out. And it's a pronunciation of the Kohen that make this guy unclean. It's not even the skin disease that technically make him unclean. He look at it, he see it, he analyze it, he figure, this is what it is. If he ain't sure, he isolates you for 7 days. That's the only time he isolates an individual. So now you put in solitary confinement, so to speak, for 7 days because he's not sure. And then after that, he might do it again. But once he made the declaration, you say he might have made a mistake. Because we find examples where it said he pronounced you clean, the next thing you know, you're not clean. So imagine it's just strictly his pronunciation over you that determines whether you're able to be near the sanctuary or not be near the sanctuary. But even more so, sanctuary is one area. Other people become unclean, but now you're not allowed to be around people except people that have the same condition you have. And that's a tough job for a Kohen. And suppose now if a Kohen, one, it tell you got to have good eyesight. That's number one. If you're going to diagnose this himself. Now they got areas where suppose he ain't sure what he's looking at, but we're reading this in particular a portion, and we understand it very well what is detail is concerning about that particular skin disorder. Then we got to say, all right, I see it this way, I see it that way, this is it, but I can't pronounce it because I'm not a Kohen. You, Kohen so-and-so, I see it this way, this is what it matches up with this here, according to the laws of Moses that's handed down to us, this is what it matches up to it, and this is what I see, but I don't have the authority to say he's unclean. That's why it's about bloodline. If you're not a Kohen, whether you know how to recognize the diagnosis or repeat this law verbatim, when you say he's unclean, he's unclean. When you say he's clean, he's clean. That's a powerful tool that the Creator entrusted to the priest. That's why I said the priest's lips should keep knowledge later on in the prophecy. And there's so much more I could speak on in there, but just for lack of time, I'm gonna go straight to the Psalms. But any questions, let's leave it in the chat, the comments on the different areas there, because that's one topic that we don't know what it is today, and it doesn't matter if a person had it today, because the temple and the Kohanim is not in existence for us, functioning capacity. So we're going straight to Psalms 120, and Psalms 120 is the beginning of Psalms of Ascent. Those that read the prayer book on the regular would know that you have 15 Psalms of Ascent, and that's in the book of Psalms. And 120 is the first one of the Psalms of Ascent. And it's interesting because after you got 15, they would say, well, why did they fall Psalms of Ascent? Well, we had 3 pilgrimage times that we would go and appear before the Creator. That would be around Pesach, and that would be also Shavuot, which we count those as counting the Omer, and it also be Sukkot. And when you go to Jerusalem, this is Psalms that was done said after the temple, pretty much David put it in order for the temple as you ascend through those pilgrimage times to Jerusalem. Because the tabernacle, you're not necessarily, I mean, you might go into the tabernacle, but you may not necessarily be ascending upward, because, you know, it might be over here in Shiloh, it might be over here in Gibeon. But when you go to Jerusalem, it's a hill country, mountainous area. So, and the way that the temple was on Mount Moriah. So you actually walking up, and they would say like 15 steps, you wind up finding there was 15 steps in Solomon Temple and all that. So it's 15 Psalms of ascent. And just the first one they normally say, and each one supposed to take you to another higher level. But let's read from the beginning. All right. If you got it, Chief, you could begin.
We're in the book of Psalms. Psalms 120. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Shir Hama'alot. A
Yeah,
song of ascent.
There you go.
In my distress I called unto Yehovah, and he answered me.
Hold right there. First of all. Now, since it's only 7 verses, I can take a moment. You are in distress at a pilgrimage time. You're supposed to be coming there to enjoy yourself. So why are you in distress when you get ready to ascend up to, the mountain of the temple on Pesach or Shavuot or any other time, or Sukkot, and you're in distress? And yet this is a psalm that the Levites sung and that other people will be singing on the way there. And that's why they call Psalm of Ascent. And there's 15 of them. And it starts with this one. You say, well, wow, that's how, when you figure, if you're going to walk up a mountain, you want more of an upbeat, upbeat song. You don't want like a slow song to slow you down. So why start with this particular psalm when you want something more on an upbeat? So let's just think about this a little bit. All right, let's go to the second verse.
Verse 2, it reads, O Yehovah, deliver my soul from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue.
Hold it. Now you got that going on way up there. Now on the pilgrimage time, should that be on your mind? And whose lying lips and whose deceitful tongue that we're talking about? And you on your way up to bring, and you're supposed to appear before the Lord and not empty-handed. And in those days, we didn't have refrigerators. We didn't have, some things you could dry, like figs, you could dry out and have them for a couple of years because you type, 2 years, and the third year you're bringing the stuff up, and same thing. Then also the pilgrimage time you're bringing stuff up. And if the place be too far, you change it to money, mark it off, the Misa, which is the type that you have, and you buy what you want in the place, where God caused the name to dwell, and you eat it and spend that money there. You don't say, well, I didn't spend as much money, man. I brought $1,000, man, but I'm around to spend about $200, so I'm gonna take the other $800 back home. No, that money gotta be spent at that spot and used on that spot. So it forces you to be more charitable too, because you can't take it back. If you brought it there, it got to be used right there in that city. So you can know the prices of the market go up those particular times of the year. Only natural, because people weren't allowed technically to bring the stuff back to their particular abode, when it comes to the types. But now, this guy started off a psalm on a somewhat of a downbeat, but we got to find out why it's still on a downbeat so far. And you want a certain type of deliverance. And you just starting your ascent. All right, pick it up in the third.
Verse 3, what shall be given unto thee, and what shall be done more unto thee, thou deceitful tongue? Sharp arrows of the mighty with coals of broom. Woe is me that I sojourn with Meshech, that I dwell beside the tents of Kedar.
Hold right there. We're going to stop it in the fifth verse a little bit. All right. Now, just like, in most books, you're looking for protection against people talking about you. That's number one. You started with that kind of stuff. But yet you climbing. I shouldn't be worried when I'm climbing because I'm going to lose a lot of energy and a lot of strength. I'm going to need some strength to walk up those steps. Some people can't walk up 2 or 3 flights of steps, because they be huffing and puffing. And especially if you got packages. And so, but they worried about people talking about them, because a lot of times when you go to the house to worship, you're wondering who's telling, who's bringing a bad name about you, who's trying to destroy your image. So all that comes into play at the time, and you want protection by it. But when it talk about Meshach is, it's like in the area of, let's say Russia, bottom part of Russia, and that's in that particular area. And then when you talk about Kedar, that's like to the south. So now you're talking about the far north of the place of Israel and the far south. Who dwelled in both places at the same time? Either you're going to be in Meshach or you're going to be in Kedar. And that's one of the sons, that's one of the sons of Ishmael, the tents of Kedar. But those places, they've been known to be problems. Anything comes in the north was problems for us. You figure you had the Arameans. That was problems for us in the north. You had the Syrians that took over. That was problems for us in the north. So so anything that came from that particular area was problems. When you talk about the south, you're going close to Egypt. Egypt was a problem for us at one time too. You're talking about different parts of the Sudan and Ethiopia and all that stuff. So, and they was more of a warlike people. So when you're born into a society, when you have more of a warlike people, and you figure I'm safe because no one actually gonna bother mess with us. We the ones be messing with everybody else. So if a person that's Israel, that's not part of that lifestyle, saying, I'm worried about that living over there. I'm worried about living in Kedar. We're just saying that I got exiled. I'm trying to make it back home. Or I don't want those people to come and take an interest on me. At the time, we even assured when we make the pilgrimage time and go down to the place where God chose his name to dwell, that we're told in the law itself that no man will desire our land. So we shouldn't be worried. But why worry when we're making this first step? So these are some of the things that's already, was given a surety from us through the prophet Moses. And then they talk about these particular areas here. And, one of the things, when we think about a country, power in most countries, at one time was about how strong your army was, how great your army was. Then later on, it was about how much your country can produce. What is the production of your country? In America, the country we're in was known for its gross national product at one time. Now we're known for how many people will buy and spend. Most of us that went through this pandemic of COVID and stuff, we know that we was given money from the government, the different stipend checks that was given out for most of the people in America that had a certain amount of annual income. They was given money from the government, but they was given the money not to save, but to spend. That's something. Say, don't stash it, but invest that money that I'm giving you. So now you gotta say, well, okay, I gotta think about that just a little bit. And then those of us that's from New York, 9/11, we know that everybody came out with unity, solidarity, and helping people in New York, especially, with the tragedy, because we lost a lot of a lot of lives, you know, in New York. You know, those that was in the buildings and those that was not in the buildings that surround the area, because anybody that ever been in New York at the time where the World Trade Buildings is, if you wasn't in the building, just even a couple blocks away, when that building come down, or you look at them high rises in New York City, where are you going to go except underground? It's not you're going to run down the block. So it was a real tragic moment. So a lot of people came together and helped out, but that's not the point I'm bringing now. The point I'm bringing is that we got, you know, the mayor at the time said he appreciate all the helps. You know, we have enough fire trucks, so we don't need. We got more fire trucks and you know, stuff like that than we could use in New York City. So if you want to really, you know, help us out further, come to New York City, you know, be in our hotels, you know, buy some of our products, vacation here. So that's about spending. And you say, well, wow. So it's not about building yourself up, but it's about, you know, emptying yourself. And that's a big difference. So the thing is that when you talk about these countries, Meshach and Kedar, those are some of the issues that people, you know, be worried about. So, you know, when people, some people in some places don't know what it is to have a full meal. So we're gonna go ahead and pick it up from the next verse, the fifth verse, sixth verse.
It reads,
verses.
My soul hath full long had her dwelling with him that hateth peace. I am all peace, but when I speak, they are for war.
Right. Everybody now, we come to the brink of a whole lot of standoffs, a lot of talk going around the world. You know, a lot of allegiances are being made, and a lot of discussions on economic fronts. So, and you say, well, why start off with this psalm here? Because, and instead, why not start off with the next psalm? Just gonna read the first line of 121, Chief, if you got it. Yeah, the first verse, 121. Okay, all right. Why not start off with that and say, my help come from no? That's a psalm that's widely known.
Hold on, Prince. Let me read it again.
All right.
Psalm 121, verse 1. I will lift up mine eyes unto the mountains, from whence shall my help come?
Right, and this, my help come from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. All right, now that's an uplifting. I know when I was over in Israel, and I was walking up Masada, I did all the wrong stuff. I wanted to walk up them 700 some steps. That's where they got steps, 700 some steps. You know, it's a lot of spot, a lot of distance you're going up, zigzagging up. They don't have any steps. And I said, wow, well, I'm younger than Abraham, I'm younger than Moses. So I started the wrong time. Boy, I prayed hard, boy. I said, I don't mind dying in the land, but not now, Lord. So when I walked all the way up, I made it all the way up. You know, when I got there, I didn't even want to walk around and tour Masada itself. I wanted to catch the next train back down, you know. But I'm singing and start, you know, doing this, trying to get myself some pep. Then I started praying and stuff like that, because I said it was getting serious. You know, I actually was just about that dehydrated up there. You know, so here it is that it would seem like you would start with that song, but they start off with the other song, 120, because in some things in life, in order to say yes to God, you got to say no to other things in life. That's what you got to do. So it teaches you in the 120 Psalm to say no to certain things in life that you know that's not right, in order to be able to say, yes, Lord. So I hope you got something out of what I said, and any mistakes by my own, and say early Shabbat Shalom, and that those that have any comments, leave in the comments and support the D.C.B channel. And if I can, I address, you know, questions that I might have been off on.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So we Me and myself and Rabbi Chief Benyamin, we do a Sunday Bible study every Sunday 9 a.m. for those that might not know. So what happens is that this week we went over the law of adultery. You know, he covered all the bases, the faces. You know, and when it comes to adultery, it speaks about. And then the conversation kind of went into marriage and divorce and things of this nature, and so he went into the law of, when a man finds something unseemly into a woman, he writes a bill of divorce. He sends her out, and then he went into the law of her, like, if she moves on, her former husband, cannot take her because that she will be deemed polluted, right? So
Okay.
basically he cannot go back to his wife to his ex-wife if she's been with another man. So the question came up, and as we broke that down, that law, then my mother asked this question because she listens to the actual show. She said, well, what about Hosea? Because her premise was, there's forgiveness, God forgives us, but God allowed Hosea to go get his harlot wife and to continue with her. What is your answer for that in terms of Hosea and God allowing Hosea to, I gave her an answer, but I wanted to hear your
Okay, I was
perspective.
kind of curious to see what you told. but in any event, a wife for whoredom. It's talking about the children of Israel. What was our whoredom when we deal with idolatry?
Right.
All right. So that was the whoredom is talking about with Hosea. That he's taking a wife of idolatry. Now, in other words, she wasn't. Some of us, unfortunately, especially in certain time periods, have a significant other that doesn't participate in this way of life, and it could be an issue on some areas, or they might have was born and raised in this way of life, but they don't gravitate to do anything and deserve a lot of stuff in this way of life. So, so that's for us when we have to worship any God and go against our laws and our Torah that we're supposed to observe. Then that's the thing of playing hold them, harlotry to him. Not that she actually had another physical individual, a man and stuff like that. And so when it comes down to the prophet, because it called everybody, the whole nation, take a wife from a nation of harlots. I said a whole nation is like that, but it's because of the worship that was going on. So, and then for it's a similarly to our people when it says not my people and then now my people.
Right.
So that's the thing where we made the change. Not God made the change. We made the change, and God acknowledged our change as far as worship goes. So that's when you talk about whoredom in that sense. So a lot of times when we look at the English term, we don't understand how it's written. I was speaking about that today about certain phrases. You say, man, that guy had a bad turban. He had a bad turban on. And he went on and started talking about this and talking about that. So now bad is negative.
Right.
Bad means no good. So if you wrote down, this guy wrote in the letter that this guy had a bad turban and he started talking about the book and this and that and the other. Then you mean, was it a good turban, nice rap, or was it despicable looking turban?
Right.
All right. So you got to know the jargon of the people at the time, because if you just see it written out, you might not understand how it was said and the manner it was spoken. Because all you're just reading without punctuation marks.
Gotcha. Yeah, because it was an interesting conversation.
Yes.
And she brought it up to me. I was like, you know, I just tried to explain to her that it was more so of, but now that you're bringing it to me this way, I understood it differently. I felt like it was more so God wanted him to feel how it felt to have a wife of whoredom, and then to make him feel how the Creator would feel when we go after other gods, or we practice idolatry. You know what I'm saying? So, but you brought it from a perspective that I never really looked at it that way. So, definitely, I got to re-examine that and go back and maybe get someone that I could go over it with in the Hebrew and get the full understanding of it.
Yeah. The whole term is like the adultery, not so much the the fornication, the physical fornication with another human being.
The adultery is the idolatry, basically, what you're
right,
saying.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's why in the prophecy, God said, where's your bill of divorce?
Right.
Divorce. I mean, we had a wedding ceremony, huh? Yeah, so we had a wedding ceremony. But he said, where's your bill of divorce?
Right.
And that's why God was able to take us back.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Nasik, for your wisdom. I pray that the Most High God be with you all. To all of you out there, don't forget that on May 27th, at Shell's Lounge in Brooklyn, 120 Hamilton Avenue, that we will be having a Unity Shabbat event. So I'm praying that everyone out there that's able, come out and support. This will be May 27th. This is Memorial Day weekend. I'm going to run the commercial before it's over, praying that the Creator of heaven and earth be with you all, that the Most High God will guide and protect you. Shalom, shalom, and everyone have a peaceful night. It's
interesting, man. Though I said 120th Psalm, and you got 120 Hamilton Avenue. Really unique.
There's something there. That's right.
We're making an ascent. So I'm talking Shalom.
Hallelujah. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom, family. Congregation Bay D.C.B presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. Date, May 27, 2023. Location, Shell's Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. To contact us for more information, you can contact us at 347-622-9090 or on our email, info@baydcb.org. Once again, Congregation Bay DCB presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. The date is May 27, 2023. The location, Shell's Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can contact us at 347-622-9090 on our email, info@baydcb.org. This is a time of praise and joy and coming together between brothers and sisters. All are invited. Come out with your best spirit of praise. Hallelujah.